Welcome back to the Coffee Nerds, where we have real conversations with real coffee nerds. Today, I'm really excited to share with you a conversation that I had with Jeff Foster of Bush Hill Coffee, all the way from North Carolina. Jeff runs a coffee roasting business where he merges art and coffee together to form Bush Hill. It's very unique and very fun. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Here's Jeff Foster. Jeff, it's so cool to finally be speaking to you today. I really appreciate you jumping on and talking coffee. So, um, yeah, before we get into anything, I just wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Jeff. I am the founder, the roaster, and the artist for Bush Hill. I'm a one-man show, but I like to refer myself as a coffee roaster artist. So I do all my own roasting and I do all my own artwork, and I create music-inspired coffee releases for a different kind of experience.
I like that you said the word experience because that's when I tried your coffee for the first time. That's exactly what it was, and I saved the bags because I I loved these coffees so much. So each of Jeff's roasts are kind of dedicated towards this is my favorite one. I like that specialty advisory coffee content. Um, yeah, so yeah, my caffeinated romance. Yeah, I got the Guns N' Roses one from a while back, and then the Love in a Coffee Maker. So these were such exciting coffees, and for reals, it was like an experience for me. So it was very fun coffees that you're producing.
Thank you, thank you. It's something when we set out to do this in terms of creating this experience. I used to be a musician. I say used to be because I lost my hearing, and then I ended up getting severe arthritis in my fingers, so I can't play music anymore. So when life gives you lemons, you learn how to make coffee. And I've always been in coffee as a consumer, probably for a good 30 years. And I, you know, figured out, I could really save a lot of money if I just learned how to roast. And for a lot of people, maybe you have that curiosity. It's very easy to roast coffee. You can make good coffee, with not much effort. What you learn as you start to get into this is that the potential to make exceptional coffee is like a never-ending quest, and so that's what makes it fun and really keeps every day new and growing. But I wanted to take all this and kind of put it together from my background as a musician, artists and bands that I love, and I know people love music. And if you can make that connection, what I'm finding is there's a lot of people that maybe either know the bands or know the coffees or vice versa, or maybe they discover it, but now they have an association. And there's just something really personal. And when you can connect those two things, and it's really, for all we got going on in the world, those are two things. Coffee and music are things we can get really passionate about, and you don't have a lot of arguments, right? So, having fun with that. And that's what the whole thing is. It should be an experience. And I think we all, if you're in coffee, it should move you every time you take a sip.
Real quick, before we get into more of the Bush Hill part of your life, what instrument did you play? And tell us a little bit about your musical history. That sounds pretty interesting.
Well, I grew up playing saxophone. And then when I got into high school, I got one of the first MIDI keyboards they ever made. It was a Roland JX3P. The first time I ever played, I got into a band and we played Tom Sawyer because nobody had a keyboard and I could play, the little riff. And then it went from there. I learned how to play bass and played all through high school and then out of high school. Actually recorded a first CD before I ever even had a CD player. So I'm really dating myself now, right? And majority of my playing career was in the 80s and early 90s, which is a really interesting time because rock and roll was the top, music genre. Sting Van Halen was like a rite of passage. And I got to see Van Halen with David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen and Michael Anthony and Alex,
Wow.
and I'll never forget it.
Wow.
But we got to open up. I got to open up for some pretty big acts at the time. One of the biggest that I got to open up was Extreme before they had the song More Than Words that went national. And actually, if you ever see the movie Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze, there's this blind guitar player. He's passed now. His name was Jeff Healey. So I actually got to open up for him, and that was a pretty cool experience. So over time, music kind of takes its toll. As I said, you if you don't wear earplugs, which I didn't, and so it took a toll in the hearing, but it was fun, and I still am a big music fan. But I can't do live music, unfortunately, but I can listen to it.
That's so cool. Wow. What a great experience. And it sounds like a lot of that you incorporate to what you do today in coffee. So let's shift into coffee a bit. And could you just share your experience and your story and how you got into coffee?
I got into coffee when I met my wife. She was actually working in a coffee shop. We've been married 26 years, so we dated like 3.5 years before that. That was my first entry point into coffee. And, that was, in the mid 90s. And, I think, kind of go through this little evolution of starting to discover at that time, there wasn't really any coffee shops. You had Starbucks, you had, a few places starting to discover some things online. And then all of a sudden, the first time that you experience specialty coffee, I think we all probably have that moment where it's like, what did I just experience? And for me, that happened at a roastery in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. It's still there. It's now a restaurant and a roastery. It's called Cranky's with a K. And they had this Ethiopia Harar. Now, Ethiopia Harar back in the day was like drinking a cup of blueberries. Unfortunately, now you just don't get that as much from that region. But I just remember drinking that and going like, this is possible with coffee. And that was just a naturally processed coffee. So from that, I started to go further down the rabbit trail and spending hundreds of dollars uh, on specialty from every roaster I could get hold of. And the internet made that really easy. Right before the pandemic hit, I started to consider like, I should just roast my own because if you roast your own coffee, you can save a lot of money. And I think anybody that gets into roasting always starts out as a home roaster, or maybe you start out in a shop and they train you. But um, at some point in time, the friends and family start saying, "Hey, can I have some coffee?" And that kind of evolved. I was on a little half-pound air roaster, a little fresh roast SR 800,
Yeah.
phenomenal little roaster. There you go, great now. One of the first things I did was I decided I was going to do a holiday coffee. And of course, I had to do something really different. So I decided I was going to do a Star Wars themed coffee, and I called it Darth Roaster's Holiday Special. And I actually drew a picture of an Imperial probe droid on Hoth holding coffee pots. Uh, and I roasted 60 pounds on a half-pound roaster in 2.5 months and sold over 100 bags. And that was the moment where it's like, oh, I got to get a bigger roaster. This might do something. And so from there, I got an Aleo Bullet, which is a 1 kilogram roaster. It's what I still use today, which surprises people because a little 1 kilogram roaster comparative to, bigger roasters that roast in more volumes. And here I am doing these things. I've really learned and grown over it. I've right at a 1,400 roast on it now. And it just really grew and evolved from there. And, it's really roasting is one of these things that is kind of mysterious when you first start out because nobody knows how coffee's roasted. Nobody even knows what coffee looks like before it is roasted. You learn all those things, and a lot of it's trial and error and just having fun. But then as you start to learn and grow, you hopefully get connected with community. And I live in North Carolina. I'm very fortunate that I have some really good friends who are in the industry that really help me in my coffee journey. One specifically I'll call out is David Tatum, who works for Della Finca Coffee and also initiated and started the Captain's Coffee. Um, was a really good, and he still is a good friend of mine, and we talk daily almost about coffee. But getting good feedback and learning a lot of instruction and understanding the basics beyond just I just roasted some coffee beans and I didn't burn them to now. What happens if I extend this yellowing phase that they call Maillard, and what kind of impact that going to have? I also think there's also books. Rob Hughes is an excellent resource. I did some classes with him as well, and of course Scott Rowell. A lot of information. Uh, Additionally, with that, within the coffee community is just talking to people. Um, One of my good friends, Mandy Spirito, who's co-founder at Vignette Coffee Roasters in Greensboro, North Carolina. So much knowledge. I've been roasting about 5 years, just about. But talking to people that have been in it for any length of time, black and white coffee roasters in Raleigh. You know, Talking to those guys, there are people that'll help you, and if you can surround yourself with good community and people that are willing to share, it can really help you grow. And so I've always tried to do the same thing. I've worked with roasters who may be just starting out. I'm very transparent. Like the number one thing people need to know about specialty coffee is I always tell people 80% of it is the producers, 20% is me not screwing it up roasting it. All those coffees that you just showed, the My
Hmm.
Caffeinated Romance, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, I didn't make it taste that way. Elkin Guzman did that. And it's just I'm here to be a good representative of what their work is. And I think if you stay in coffee long enough, you start to realize if you're humble and you really are honest, like we're part of a bigger journey that starts at the farm and ends with that whoever buys that cup and experiences it. And there is a responsibility, I think, if you're genuine about specialty coffee, to be a good representative and to really tell those stories. And that's why I like to use the word experience. It should move you when you drink a cup of coffee.
Wow. You just said so much. Like you just went through your story. I mean, you kind of like went into like exactly what I wanted to ask with how you started roasting, um, the tools that you use. I mean, maybe I can just like expand on that a little bit. So as a
Sure.
roaster, you you started. So you've been doing this for about 5 years. So this is like
Hmm.
right before COVID. Um,
Hmm.
what were what were some of the tools and resources that you had access to at the time, and has that changed within the last 5 years? Are like what kind of
Yeah.
resources are available
Good.
now for those interested in roasting coffee?
So obviously the internet is one resource. The best resource is the personal resources, the people that you get to know. If you're interested in getting into roasting, whether you're going to do this as a hobby or you have ambitions to own your own roastery, get to know people that do it in your community, learn from them, ask them questions, become a student. And, so that's the first thing. The second thing, honestly, I'm not a big fan of all social media. I don't like Facebook is not really my favorite thing, but the one thing I will say Facebook is really good at is Facebook groups.
Hmm.
So, whatever roaster you get, you probably can find a group for it. And there's some pretty big groups out there where it's user forums. You can ask questions. And I tend to find the communities are really, really good at supporting each other. So that's another resource. You don't have to go solo. Um, I think anything by Rob Hughes, Scott Rowell is going to be great for learning just general roast theory. If you're just starting out, some of it may go over your head. And that's not a criticism of any of the work. It's just more of you got to learn the fundamentals. You got to learn the basics. And that just takes with time and experience. You can't fast track that and become an expert overnight. The other things that I would say is we've gotten to a point with roasting And if you once you get into Alio, Mill City, anything where you may be using some type of data logging software.
Hmm.
So Alio uses Roast World, Roast Time, and then you can look at things in Roast World. Um, Artisan, Cropster, there's a art and a science to this. And the fun thing is, it's not all one way or another. I mean, it's a mix of both. And you should be able to use your senses as well as, being able to interpret what you're doing,
Hmm.
but recording, looking at things, understanding what does development time do to my roast? If I develop it longer or develop it shorter, how much moisture loss have I got with the coffee? Or actually even like the color of the coffee bean. There's a lot of things where, and this is part of what makes coffee roasting so much fun, is that it can never get to a point where you're just stagnant and it's just like there's no challenge with this because I can do it all. Every bean is different.
Hmm.
Um, Processes are different, you know, and really just learning techniques, that a lot of trial and error. And so, you have tools like that. Then, as you get further into it, there's now a lot of accessibility around, your roast analysis. So, I mean, you can get those for pretty reasonable cost now to actually see, what the Actron scale is, which is a scientific word for just kind of like, knowing, is it a light roast? Is it a light medium? Is it medium dark? Using a coffee refractometer. So understanding when you are brewing things like your TDS scores and understanding all that to be able to dial in so that you're getting that right extraction and really, nailing it of what the coffee has to offer. And so, a lot goes into that. But I think, if I had to really boil it down, the best resources you can get is finding people that are knowledgeable, that are willing to invest in you, and just building a relationship. Because you can learn stuff yourself, but it's experiential. And, also, I guess the last thing would be, you know, social media, especially. I mainly do stuff on Instagram because obviously with video and artwork and different things, but just the connections, how you and I met. I regularly reach out to people that roast, and I'll swap coffees. I'll ask questions. And you can build that network of knowledge. It just helps you further in your coffee journey.
Those are really great points. And what I'm taking away from this is just being willing to ask questions, whether you're in a group, preferably in person with someone that you can find, but just building that community around you to kind of help you further your journey. All really great points that I think can be applicable to a lot of outside of roasting too, just our personal lives. Like,
Absolutely. There is no such thing as a dumb question.
mhm.
And if, you talk to somebody that's not willing to share or tries to make it, I'll tell you right now, if you ever talk to anybody that thinks that they have some proprietary thing on roasting, like you probably don't want to get advice from them, because if they're not willing to share, if they're not willing to open up, that's more, they're not about community. Coffee, there's so many people out there that drink coffee. We think about Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts. If both of those shut down tomorrow, there would not be enough coffee roasters to fill the demand. So there's enough room at the table for everybody, in my opinion. I'm obviously more of a coffee roaster artist than I am a full-time coffee business. But, you know, I have friends that roast in Raleigh. I have friends who roast in Boone. I have friends who roast all over the state. And I celebrate whenever they get, business, when they're doing something. When we do coffee festivals, it's just not a competition, at least with me.
Yeah.
I want to experience what other people have and learn, because we're all we all love this. We love specialty coffee, and there's such an opportunity to grow it that we
Hmm.
shouldn't hold it in, and we should be willing to, help each other. In my opinion, that to me is the biggest opportunity within specialty, is building coffee community and getting people to support local roasters, and to really experience new things, because
That's
that's where
great.
your creativity is going to come in.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to use your words from earlier with creating experiences and then building community, it's almost like this joined experience that you're creating for yourself as you collaborate with others and learn from others, really.
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
and and going to back to that experience, because you mentioned earlier the caffeinated my caffeinated romance coffee.
Yeah.
So this one stood out to me, and I mean, heavy strawberry tasting notes. I mean, this was probably this year one of my favorite coffees. I don't know. I'm not even holding up. This was probably one of my favorite coffees. um, yeah, and so a producer is Elkin Guzman.
Hmm.
Um, and let's talk about this for a little bit because this is a
Yeah.
co-ferment.
Hmm.
And yeah, but let's talk about co-ferments a little bit. I want to hear your opinion on just coffee producing. This is
Hmm.
relatively, I think, a new thing where coffee is fermented with a fruit, and
It
this is
can,
a
yeah.
strawberry ferment, correct?
Well, yeah, this one's interesting. So he actually, in this particular coffee, he puts over 330 hours of fermentation, where it's fed with the culture of microorganisms and molasses for the energy, and strawberry for sweetness. It's not directly, he puts the strawberries with the coffee cherries. Um, that said, I mean, there are coffees that are co-fermented, and he does stuff as well with that. Um, Look, whether you like co-ferments or you think the idea of like, oh, they're putting different things in there and it's altering the coffee and it's not the same as like regular coffee. At the end of the day, these coffee producers have to make a living, and our culture is really centered. The general public is really centered around cheap coffee. You know, our biggest obstacles to getting people to try and start specialty coffee is Folgers and Maxwell House, and what they experience at these chains like McDonald's. And they think because certain price points, and they see things that if you're going to get specialty coffee, it's going to cost you some money. It's not cheap. And, these producers have to make a living. They support communities. It's not just them, it's all the people that work on the farms. And, if you have mass produced coffees that, our bigger chains are coming after, they're going to drive the price down. This is a way for them to create innovation. So I look at like co-fermentation as the growers' innovation, and they have every right to do whatever they want to with what they produce, because they are the stars. We're not the ones that. I didn't make this coffee taste like what you described. That's Elkin Guzman. And, if he wants to make co-fermentation coffees, then, go for it, because they're delicious. I think a lot of times, I think then coffee, you can get kind of this, uh, you can get different people with different types of stances. There's people that just only drink light roasts. People don't drink dark roasts. I don't want to have anything to do with it. You get a lot with that, especially when you get more into the realm of people that drink like geishas, or really high end coffees, probably don't drink dark roasted coffees, and just steer clear away from them, and that's okay. But everything can be experienced, and there's a place for it all. And um, people have to be willing to try these things and at least keep an open mind, because this is innovation in the future. It's a way for them to create flavor experiences. The first time I ever experienced a co-ferment was actually Elkin Guzman Strawberry Katope natural processed coffee that you have here. I sourced it a year later, but Black and White, who really are a huge influence on me with like co-fermentation and doing innovation with flavors. that's where I first experienced it, and it blew my mind the same way that Ethiopia Harar did back in like 2005. Um, and you know, I think I think we have to, we have to be open to trying these things. Are you going to like them all? Probably not. It's not an easy thing. It
Mhm.
can. I've had some that's kind of like, not me. Might be somebody else, but not me. But it's just another opportunity that, to me, it's a lot like craft beer. You got traditional lagers. Lord knows we got a ton of IPAs.
Oh yeah.
But then we might have stouts. Then we might have sours. And there's something for everybody. It's where you really gravitate to is what you're going to drink. And so to me, co-fermentation might be like the sour or, a stout or something's like innovation. Like I did a collaboration with Brown Truck Brewery in High Point. We've done 3 beer releases. The last one we did was an amber coffee lager, which was called Brew Fighters. It was kind of a Foo Fighters inspired one. But before that, we did an Imperial Mexican Stout, and I used the Mexico Chiapas coffee. And then they added in local chocolatier Eigen chocolate. They do cacao nibs, and then we added some vanilla and some peppers, and it made it like a Mexican hot chocolate. Not pure beer, but it tastes amazing.
Nice.
So that's how I look at these things. You got
Mhm.
to be more, we shouldn't be judgmental about what the growers do. If anything, we should be thankful because if all we did was make dark roasted coffees, what a boring world that would be. And
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with dark roasted, but it's just saying, if that's all you think of, you limit yourself.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of respect and appreciation for the producers, for those that are actually making the coffee. Could you talk a little bit more about that? How did you
Yeah.
start developing that appreciation and understanding
Mhm.
for the growing process?
Um, so because I'm a coffee roaster artist, I am not buying full bags of coffees. So I'm not buying pallets. I don't have a big warehouse. I have a 1 kilogram roaster. So my access to specialty comes through really good sources like the Captain's Coffee and Delafinka Coffee here in North Carolina, who have direct relationships, or in some cases, like Delafinka is actually the grower. And um, others that I get connected with right now, I am working very closely with Katia Duke out of Honduras. She's actually going to be my feature release for my 2 year anniversary next month. And, you know, I think, where you source from when you get good information to understand what you're buying, understand what went into it, understand the elevation, the process, the story is really important because I think if you're gonna represent your growers, then you need to be able to tell their story in a meaningful way so that people can really appreciate why that cup tastes so amazing. That's with Elkin, I mean, this is heart and soul. Katia, you know, I don't speak Spanish, but I use the Translate app on my phone, and we have dialogues back and forth. And she sends me like 30 some pictures and videos, and I start to see all of the people that work there, and I see her community involvement. And I've only been in this 5 years. She's like been in this her whole life. You know, there needs to be a level of respect and really just reverence for the perseverance that these growers have because it's hard. It's hard work. And, it didn't just fall off the tree and into my roaster. Like there was a lot that went into it. And I think, you just really know where your place is. The other thing I'll say is like when you get into roasting, somebody inevitably is going to get some specialty coffee from you and they're going to say, oh my gosh, this is the best coffee I've ever had in my life. And you can do one of two things. You can be egotistical and think, ha, look what I did.
Mm.
Or you can be very realistic and feel like, wow, that is the greatest thing I've heard because that means that I sourced it the right way and I got it from a really high quality producer. And you'll never see me ever in any type of content that's posted ever take credit for somebody raving about a coffee. You know, I had somebody post about, I actually used the Elkin Guzman strawberry co-ferment, and I did an innovation blend with Hario Arcia peach and wine yeast to make a strawberry peach. It was a Lana Del Rey inspired coffee I called Dream. And somebody recently just posted about doing a flash brew and says it's the best cup of coffee they've ever had. And I was like, shout out to Hario and Elkin on that. And I mean it because I'm just here to make it available and to tell the stories. You know, it's we need to be mindful of who really produces these and what went into that, because I don't personally get to go on origin trips. Um, I don't maybe not necessarily get to talk with people directly. Maybe it's text, but it means something more when you can really dialogue with them. And so when I'm working with some of the producers and I do get the access, one of the fun things with Katya is actually I gave her some choices about what do you want to pair this coffee with. And so we have something really cool in store for her coffee. And actually, same thing like with Della Finca, sharing like, hey, this is what I see when I'm drinking this coffee. This is what it is. Like Elkin loved my caffeinated romance, and I don't put anything out without sharing. If I have direct access to the producers, I share everything with them before I ever even post it, because the last thing in the world I want to do is misrepresent them, or you know not. I want to make sure that I am saying everything I should be and properly giving them the credit. So that's kind of how I look at these producers.
I really like how you get involved as much as you can directly with the producers, and just either just sharing stories or sourcing directly from them. So earlier on the call, you did mention how just your respect for the producers, and you mentioned a specific way that you yourself give back.
Mhm.
And I want to kind of open this time up just for you to share about your project on the side there.
Sure, thanks. Uh, about a year ago at this time, I learned about a nonprofit based in Vermont called Grounds for Health, that focuses on women's health in coffee producing regions. And specifically, what they do is go into coffee farms and deliver cervical cancer pre screening kits, because that is an addressable need. It's something that can be eliminated. And they've been doing it since 1996. And I'm not doing this because I'm trying to be some wild entrepreneur and grow some mega empire of coffee. I want to create experiences for people. And I want it to be genuine and meaningful. And I want to, at the same time, be able to give back, because I'm very sincere about the producers are really the stars. And so I reached out to them, and I did a coffee. It was one of the first coffees I did, was inspired by the band Ghost, and it's called Roast. And it has my logo in it, this little logo right here, right there. And I was like, I got an idea, and this was totally self-initiated, but I was like, I want to do something. So because I'm my own, I mean, this is just me. I can do whatever I want to. So I permanently retired Roasts with the Bush Hill logo and put Grounds for Health in there. And I actually reached out to them and I said, hey, I got this idea. I want to do this. So I want to create something that would support women's health and also feature a women-led coffee. And so what we did is I made the backdrop here, and this is the current one. Um, and this is a Rwanda Nyamasheki Mahirahira wash. It's actually, I sourced this with Hesia Coffee out in Anaheim. Jared Hell's really good to work with. Um, but I wanted to raise awareness. So you can see women are the backbone of the coffee industry. A lot of people don't know this, but women account for over 70% of the coffee labor workforce in the world. But the access to basic health care is very limited. So while we love these coffees, if we aren't being like mindful of the fact that, there's this delicate ecosystem, there's this whole journey of things that go on from seed to cup, we should, if we have the opportunity, do something. And I'm not saying everybody probably I'm not on a soapbox to say everybody is doing it, although I'd be happy if people did. But I wanted to do something in my own way and just say, you know what? I'm going to carry a women-led coffee, and for every bag of coffee I sell, I'm going to donate $5. Not a dollar. I don't want to give 10%. I'm just a coffee roaster artist. Why am I going to give like $5? That's not going to be enough. I want it to be something meaningful. So we started doing that in September of last year, and to date, I've raised over $800 just through doing that. And what I do at my pop-ups, and they gave me materials, is I get to tell their story. You know, that picture right there should really make you think about what happens with coffee, you know, and what's really important. And so, it's just a way to give back. It's not something I want any kind of bragging rights with. I have transparency. I try to provide like quarterly updates on Instagram, and I tag Grounds for Health. But they've been a really great partner, and it's just something I'll do indefinitely as long as I'm doing coffee. But it's just another way that can be genuine and real about this.
I love that. That's so powerful and inspiring as well. Even in just a small way, being able to give back and honor those that are actually doing the work to harvest these coffees for us.
Hmm.
Yeah, what would you say is one of the biggest challenges that you faced as a roaster, and particularly a small, small business, small roaster in
Hmm.
North Carolina?
The number one challenge is access to maybe some of the coffees that I want. Um, that again, I'm not buying full bags, and it's a business model. I can understand that. It's sometimes not that easy to get a co-ferment maybe that you want, or get some really crazy coffee that you could really do something with. Um, that's a challenge. That's not an obstacle, but I've been very fortunate to build relationships with some of the suppliers and some of the people that have access to those coffees that are willing to work with me, to do some fun stuff. Really, I think another challenge as a roaster artist is you just getting your name out there. Um, I don't have a big advertising budget. It's really word of mouth. It's pop up experiences, and I love that. At the same time, I have to be mindful about my inventory. I have to be mindful of how much I invest in a coffee,
Hmm.
and make sure that if I do get one of those coffees, that I can sell it. And sometimes you have to put your personal biases, have to take a back seat about what you might like in coffee, but really focus on what people want. And um, you know, it, it may, if you're new to coffee roasting, if you're don't really spend a whole lot of time in this yet, might surprise you as much as we talk about all this innovation. People like dark roasted coffees. People want something that's going to be strong, and there's a place, and I have gotten to learn a lot about giving people what they want, meeting them where they are, introducing them to other things. The other hot topic that if you want to really get somebody into a heated debate is decaf. People hate decaf,
Hmm.
and I actually this is one of my all time favorite releases. This is called Rage Against the Caffeine, and
Nice.
it's so funny at pop ups. Because one of the things that I try to do, if you come up to my table, you're going to hear all the music playing. I have like a 6 hour playlist of every band that I've done. I've done about 20 releases of these things so far, and I've got a gazillion more. But I have green coffee samples. I have ground coffees that you can smell. So you see it, you hear it, you taste it with the sampling, what's on brew. You touch it, and it never fails with decaf. I can just let somebody, hey, smell this. Oh my gosh, it tastes amazing. That's amazing. It's a decaf, and then you'll see them go like, ugh. And they're either mad at themselves because they just admitted it's good, or I think there's a lot of challenges in the way of just introducing people to things beyond maybe what they're used to. There's life beyond burnt ash with cream and sugar, what we call, big store coffee. I won't say any brand names. I've already done that. You probably have to leave that out. But, it's just getting people to understand what specialty coffee is about. Not only just like what type of roast level it is. You can go to any coffee shop, and then usually when you ask them what kind of coffee they go, we have a light roast, we have a medium roast. But there's that lack of hospitality where that information. One of my friends who lives in South Korea, his name is Jay Kim, and he's a co-founder of UFO Dripper. And that's pretty amazing. Kinsey
Yeah.
Che, he and Kinsey. Jay used to open up his home to strangers to come in and experience specialty coffee, and he actually invited me, and then he started to take some of my specialty coffee and like do it in cupping sessions. And he always impressed upon me the need for hospitality in a meaningful way. And so, we have a challenge of really making people care. Nobody cares until you make them care. And so the music and the art are genuine and they're fun, but it's a
Yeah.
gateway to get them in to experience the real thing that we're there for is the coffee. And so then they start to really see these connections and they start to really understand, man, I love drinking this and I can put on this music and it just sets a mood. And if we've done that, then we've won because now people understand specialty coffee is special, not just, another bag that they can buy in a big box store.
I've been kind of getting into some decafs lately. There's actually one out here uh, in Southern California called Familiar Coffee, and
Yeah,
all he does,
Matthew.
yeah, yeah, all he does is
Yeah.
decaf, and it's just amazing. Just changing the narrative right there with specialty decaf. I think it's growing. I think.
So the U.S. Brewing Championship this year in Rancho Cucamonga, California, was won with a decaf.
Wow.
People hate on decaf, but I find that 99.9% of the people that hate on it have never actually tried it. Or if they have, they had one bad experience. But most of the time, it's just the idea of like, well, what's the point?
Yeah. What's the
And
point of
decaf,
decaf?
and people will ask me, what's your favorite coffee? And hands down, Rage Against the Caffeine all day long. Because I drink it every night. And I think people that drink decaf are the best coffee drinkers. Because if you really are drinking that, then you love coffee for the taste of coffee.
Hmm.
Um, there's a lot of room for growth, and there's a lot of new processes. There's also a lot of ignorance out there where people will read stuff and articles about decaffeination techniques are bad. Now, if you're getting it from a specialty coffee roaster who sources and specialty grade, um, you got nothing to worry about. If it's mountain water process, Swiss water process, EA, the ethyl acetate, um, even the Nagalis Typica decaf, which I did. I did a really fun one with that one. I actually did a creative here.
Drink
I was
Floyd.
drink
Nice.
drink Floyd. Um, but yeah, I think decafs have a lot of opportunity and upside for people
That's cool.
because it can be experienced.
What process is that the Rage Against Caffeine?
So that one is a very interesting. That is produced by Delafinca Coffee. It is a honey processed coffee from Marcala in Honduras
Mhm.
that is then Swiss water decaffeinated. And it actually won the Golden Bean Award last year for best decaf in North America. And it's just really like it's a liquid dessert, in a good way. You've got like the pecans and the dates and the, marshmallows and just it's just delightful to drink and just to chill. I think of coffee sometimes. There's certain coffees that fit different needs. And I think there's a certain group of coffees that you can kind of call comfort food for the soul. It's not anything outrageous with those. Not everything has to be some, crazy, like, oh my gosh, what am I drinking? This is wild. But more of like, man, this coffee is so good that it becomes bittersweet when it's over because it's like, I want more of it. Or you go to bed and you're like, I can't wait to drink this the next morning. And there's certain coffees that fit that. This one is one of those. And um, it's astounding.
Man,
Outstanding coffee.
you've talked up that decaf. I need to get my hands on it one of these days.
Man, it's so good. It is so good. And I bet Familiar Coffee, I think he actually roasted that decaf as well. So if you can get it locally, go get it from him. I'd be happy to get it for you too. But I know I got to get with him and get some of his decafs. 'Cause I always like to try others.
So earlier you were also talking a little bit about the challenge of kind of educating people, for those that are brand new to specialty coffee and just
Mhm.
have no idea what they're in for. Like, what are some good first steps for those that are just getting into it?
So one of the first things that I always ask people when they come up to my pop-up is a very simple question. You're a coffee drinker because they're looking at all their artwork, right? And if they say yes, I can tell how much they're really into it or not. They're like, oh yeah. And my next question is the most important question. What do you like? And usually I'm going to get a few things. Um, if it's somebody that's never bought it, it's going to be whatever my spouse buys me, I drink. You know, I just want it strong and bold. I hear it all. Or I will get somebody that's like, I love to do pour overs. And that really helps me understand where to take a conversation and meet them. So, it's very subjective. If it's somebody completely new, probably not going to start them out on a Ethiopia natural or a co-ferment because that might blow their mind. But I like to use the analogy of going to a craft brewery, and you might want to introduce them to something that might be like a lager to start, something kind of middle of the road. Here's a really good medium roast coffee, and this coffee is not going to taste like burnt ash. You may not even have to put as much cream or sugar. And by the way, we shouldn't be judgmental if people want to put cream and sugar in coffee. You know, black and white usually has a good saying. It's like if it's good, it's good. And it's like if that's what makes you get you excited, man, do it all day long. I don't care. Um, but really, kind of starting them out, take them on maybe a medium and or giving them a good darker roast that's going to be different than what they may experience. And then we can introduce them over time because it's an acclimation. There has to be some appreciation about that. Um, I think one of the things that I would long to see in specialty coffee more is intentional education with consumers. Not, you know, competitions are great, expos are great, but how are we reaching people one on one and how are we introducing them and telling them, let me tell you a little bit about this. There's this guy named Elkin in Colombia, and he does this crazy work with coffee. He's like he's an artist. Sebastian Ramirez. They're artists. They handpick these. They oversee everything with it. And now this cup is the fruit of their labor. And what this is going to experience for you, is these nice notes of whatever the coffee profile is. But really making people appreciate that and understand like what went into it at a certain level. You don't want to throw a book at them. I don't think I would get into talking about anaerobic fermentation or carbonic maceration with somebody off the bat. Start with something basic. Hey, did you know that a coffee bean is actually the seed of a cherry? It's not actually a bean. We call it that. Honey process has nothing to do with honey. It's just we don't want to call it mucilage because that sounds too much like something else and that taste sounds sick.
Yeah.
You know, it's really just introducing people. And so, it might be I use this analogy a lot. For people that are meat eaters and they grill steaks, I was like, you can grill a steak rare, you can grill it well done. You're going to get two different outcomes. Coffee's
Mhm.
a lot the same way. It's how we choose to roast it. It's what brings out what the producers made. We can bring out fruitiness, or if we take it a little longer, we can bring out more chocolates and caramels, or we can make it more earthy and down the road. Or if you get it really down the road, then it's like you're getting into stuff maybe that you don't really like and you're having to add a lot of cream and sugar. So we have to keep it simple, but we have to give people an introduction and allow them to be comfortable to ask questions and not feel like they're going to be, judged if they ask a very simplistic question. You know, a lot of people are just going to drink coffee and you're going to expect them to tell you that it has all these notes of different things. And they're going to say, tastes like coffee, but I like it.
Mhm.
And it's like, that's okay. You got to build those things. That's why, we didn't all grow up being coffee connoisseurs. So I think patience and just simplicity, start with the basics, can go a long way. Because
I like.
once you get people, and I have people that buy coffee from me that now jokingly is like, you have ruined my family because we won't drink anything except your coffee because we can't go to Costco and buy stuff now. And I take that as a compliment, more of just like, hey, man, I did my job, in
Yeah.
terms of introducing specialties, not me. But I think those are the opportunities that we have.
So I really like how you meet people where they're at. It's definitely not feeling any judgmental attitude from your end. So the patience, the service, and just meeting people is really inspiring. Um,
Yeah. The real funny one is when you at the pop up. So I do a weekly pop up at a farmer's market and a train depot. It's a really cool setup. It's Lexington Farmers Market. So man, I'm getting everybody. You know, I'm not just getting specialty coffee crowd. So that's where you're going to get people. It's just like, I want it strong. I like to drink Death Wish. I want Black Rifle. And then, it's like, okay. That I even roast Robusta. I mean, like, and it's like, if you really want it strong, that'll give you double the caffeine, and it's going to taste way better. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's you got to have fun with it. My perspective's a lot different maybe from a coffee shop owner. I think a lot, the one thing I will say for coffee shops is, just an investment in your baristas, and education and training, really making them part of it because they represent you and specialty coffee to your clientele who come in. And, they can either have a great experience and keep coming back. And there are some phenomenal shops that do that. And then there's others just like, I hear horror stories from people, and there's good and bad with everything. But I think it's just really like we have to be representatives of what we are representing with this. And it's really back to the growers and the producers and just the quality. And that's what's really, to me, going to grow this in a different way. I do think accessibility now is greater than ever, especially from a micro roaster standpoint.
mhm.
Um, your friend that runs the Familiar Coffee, you know, it's not a big coffee company. I'm not a big coffee company. There's a lot of people that aren't big coffee companies, but yet, there's opportunities where little niche roasters can really excel, much in the same way of like craft breweries, right? And so, it's really becoming more and more popular. I've seen a lot of advances within home roasting that can also move to, more light commercial roasting in the last 5 years. And, I think you're only going to see that grow and grow because people learn that it's not that hard to get into it and it can be a very fun hobby that if you want to take it further, you can. It can be a lot of fun. And that to me is where I see a lot of the upside with what we can do as an industry.
Well, it certainly feels like you have a lot of fun with what you do. Um, and just incorporating even just the artwork. Quick question on that: are you drawing all that? Like, are you designing all your stuff?
I design all the stuff. I do majority of it. I draw. I do use and I leverage as a tool. I don't do it as just a straight copy, but I leverage it. I'll leverage technology like generative AI for some things I can't physically get out on paper. I don't have a bit of art experience. I just see it in my head and I find a way to make it happen. Most of what I do is I draw on my iPad and I use, like programs like Procreate, or other tools, and then video work. And really, so it kind of goes back. You find a way to find a way. But a lot of it's just, creativity and, you know, I don't know. I can't really tell you. To me, this is like songwriting because I see connections with coffee and music, and it's just like, well, that's pretty fun. I'll do that. And, um, it just kind of happens. I've had things where I'll be driving down the road and all of a sudden something will pop in my head and I've got to get it out. And I'll spend 8 hours until I get it out. And literally, Rage Against the Caffeine happened on driving back from Washington, D.C. last year at D.C. Coffee Festival. And colleague of mine who goes on these coffee festivals with me, Bill VA, he's like, you should do Rage Against the Caffeine. And I was like, challenge accepted. And we'll just sit and listen to the song, think about the coffee connections. Like Caffeinated Romance was one where that one actually started out. I actually have a completely different creative, a totally different album of theirs that I started with. And at the last minute, I knew the Black Parade was like their most popular. I was like, oh, that's the first sip of the day. I can do that. And, and then this one to me is probably the most hilarious one. Never mind the K cups, God saves the beans.
Nice.
If it makes people laugh, it's meant to be inspired, and hopefully it introduces some people to the groups that it's inspired with. So what I do is like on the back of the bags, I'll put QR codes on them. And I actually make like creative videos where I'll incorporate artwork and video, some of it shooting with a coffee in action, and try to make it like a fun little memorable experience so that like you're getting something with it, and it's meant to be fun. So
I like it.
no, I'm not a classical artist. I'm just a skateboard artist that creates.
Yeah, well,
But
you're making it happen. You're making it happen for sure. And another thing that you have fun in is swimming, or specifically long distance swimming. So I just wanted to bring that up real quick because you said I think the longest swim you did was 5 miles, and that is
yeah.
just I can't even I can't fathom being in the water that long. Just
So
just swimming. Can you talk a little bit about what you do there?
yeah.
That sounds like fun.
Well, you know, I don't know how fun it'll sound when I tell you I lap swim, but I have a local Y, and I have made it part of my morning routine. I think it's very important, um, that you have a routine and you have some way to really start your day off in a positive aspect of really clearing your mind. So for me, I'm in the pool at 6 a.m. every morning, and it's just the only time of the day I don't have technology in my head because I have Bluetooth hearing aids, which I can hear first crack better than anybody because I do is jack them up and I can stream music all day long. So it's like there's positives to it, right? Uh, but like it's the only time that I don't have technology in front of me, and it really just helps me think through creative thinking and ideas, what's going on in the day, and breathing and rhythm is all about swimming, and you can build up your endurance to where I mean, I can do Ironman length swims. That's not a problem. I can swim all day, but it just is my creative outlet. That's where a lot of my ideas come from because it allows me just to really slow down and think. We have so many things going on So, whether it's a pool or if it's outside and you're walking or something, I think it's really important to have that place where you can really set your focus for the day, working out, physically working yourself, and it just really spurs creativity. And it's something, if I don't get to do it, I don't feel good for the day. And so it's just the way I start my days, and just really value and enjoy it. So yeah, the 5 mile swim was something I did for a fundraiser for Stop Soldier Suicide. My father was in the Navy and he passed. So I did that on Father's Day in dedication to him, and it took me right at 3 hours. But when you get into the creative thinking, an hour can feel like 5 minutes, and so it's all rhythm and pace. But I love it.
I've never swam that long in my life. So I just thought that was an interesting thing to do. But I like how you connected that with just being creative and just having a space where we're not distracting our minds. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. So that's really good just for our own mental health. And for you, that's another way that you help your mind be creative.
Well, it's a blessing and a curse. This never stops. Like I'm, whether I want it to or not, I'm always thinking like about what's next.
Hmm.
And you would laugh if you saw my creative process, because in the last 2 weeks I have created three new music releases, uh, and I've kind of flip flop back and forth. What am I going to do for these coffee festivals? And I'll start out with one, and it's like I'll go through the whole process, and now it's like, no, I'm going to change it and do this. And I have some that I've been sitting on for over 18 months, and it's just it never stops. The ones that are coming up next are going to be a lot of fun, and I'm actually even looking getting into expanding some things, because I've covered just about every major rock band in the 70s and the 80s within reason, the big popular ones,
Yeah.
but there's more. But I've moved more into the 90s, and I even got into a little bit of the last 10 years with Lana Del Rey. But I have some fun stuff coming out, and hopefully, like I said, it makes people laugh. And that's all it's about, it's just having a good time.
Yeah, so I'm just going to wrap things up a bit. I'm just curious before we close up, what are you currently drinking or brewing at home?
Everything. Uh, One of the highlights that I've had in the last month was a blend from Counterculture Coffee and Fritz Coffee Company in Korea called Gemini.
Okay,
Really, really amazing. And I tend to answer these questions more of other roasters. Vignette Coffee Roasters has this Costa Rica white honey that has been really delicious. Um, and, you know, just some of these new coffees that we have coming out. I have a link sample roaster, so I can roast in really small quantities as well, which allows me to really play around. So the upcoming release that I've got, it's going to be pretty wild. Has been a lot of fun. And Katia's coffees. I've got some fun stuff coming up with Honduras with De La Finca. Um, I'm going to be in Washington, D.C. at DC Coffee Festival,
cool.
and I'm actually doing something pretty cool with that. I'm going to have two different coffee varieties from the same producer. It's two brothers, two totally different experiences in a creative way. So um, those will be fun.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, there's so many good coffees out there. What are
Well,
you drinking this that you've liked so
what
far?
what am I doing? I mean, I mentioned the one that I had earlier this year from you. Um, yeah, right now I'm trying. There's this coffee club in Seattle, Washington,
Hmm.
called P&W Coffee Club, and so they sent me this roaster called Stamp Out Coffee. It's pretty good.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's in Ethiopia.
Enjoy those Ethiopians, because right now I
I
have
heard the shipping is kind of like an interesting thing right now with. Coffee comes from
Yeah,
Ethiopia.
there's a washed Ethiopian that I should already have that got hit by a Houthi missile in the Red Sea.
Oh, wow. Okay.
uh, yeah, yeah, but there's some really good coffees. Like, I mean, I love Ethiopian coffees, but you know, there's so many different good coffees from around the world.
Hmm.
It's just a matter of finding good quality offerings, and it sounds like you got a good one. Getting some of these local roasters. I tend to find some of the local roasters that are really into specialty coffee can give you some really crazy experiences.
Yeah.
Sometimes even more so than bigger ones. But
Yeah. Yeah. I
yeah.
had this one guy. This guy sent me. He's from like Central California, a micro roaster, but he got some coffee that was produced in China,
Hmm.
and it was a lighter roast. It was a natural, but it had like red wine tasting, jackfruit. It was pretty interesting. That was a fun one too.
Yeah. That's starting to become available, accessible. I will say for smaller roasters, co-ferments, and you can run across some geishas that aren't going to break the bank, relatively speaking. There's more coffees like that are becoming more widely available as that demand starts to grow, and um, you'll start to see that more and more. I think, it was just been in the last year that we've seen some things from China popping up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thailand, um, Vietnam,
Yep.
they have more than Robusta.
They got some good
So,
stuff too.
oh yeah, oh yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all over.
When you're brewing coffee, what equipment are you using at home?
So for batch brew, I really like the Olson Simply Good Brewer. Um, I also have a Technivore Mocha Master. And for pour overs, I use the Origami ARS dripper, the plastic dripper. I'm a big AeroPress fan. It's very underappreciated. It's a lot of flexibility. Those are really my go-tos. And the Oria V3 I like a lot. Um, and then basic kettles, can't go wrong with the fellow stags.
Mhm.
Your scales. You got smart scales, so anything from. I mean, I've got the fellow Tally Pro and uh, Kaya Fluid. I have way too many things. My wife loves it. And I will say, like, just having the refractometer is another fun thing. So if you're into pour overs, really measuring, it can help you learn about, extraction, and help you learn, like, if you're hitting it right in the middle, or if you're making the coffee too strong, too weak, too sour, too bitter. Um, there's tools like that in community that you can learn more from, about how to do it. And really, it's just trial and error, you know?
Never used one myself. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, well, they're more accessible. The price points, especially for the R2 extract. Some of the refractometers, if you look around, you can spend 500 plus,
Oh
but
wow.
these are much less. But they're great for just learning and figuring out, like, why did this coffee taste so good, or if it's off the mark, or helping you understand that there's all this science behind this,
Hmm.
as well as like the art. And the fun thing with me with coffee is it's not just a one-sided, like, it's a combination of it, um, that you kind of get what you put into it. And if you try hard enough, you can really create some cool stuff. I mean, as far as like just the pour overs.
And I know you're not 100% coffee business, but if you were to give advice to someone who's just new to coffee and wants to pursue roasting or pursue opening up their own coffee business, what would be like your first tip for that person?
Buy a home roaster to start and make sure that you enjoy doing it. Like, you're actually gonna stick with it. Um, I think the worst thing you can do is to say, I'm going to get into coffee and go drop 10 grand and get some big commercial roaster and have no clue what you're doing. take your time, learn. Um, I mean, like I said, I spent the first year and a half on a fresh roast SR 800. I've used a Baymore, I had a hot top, before I got an Ilia bullet. Um, and I'm not saying that you have to do that, but like know what you're getting into when you do with coffee, and the time with it. The other thing is I think you need to talk to people that are in coffee that have been successful. The people that are willing to talk are the ones that you want to listen to. The people that don't want to talk to you, you probably don't want to take their advice anyway. But learn about their journeys and learn about their experiences, learn about what it takes.
Mhm.
And I think the biggest thing above all is you how bad do you want it? Because in my motto, if you see on my Instagram, in the words of the late great Bon Scott of AC/DC, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. So,
Yeah.
when I go to coffee events, there's probably the fact that I'm using a 1 kilogram roaster and doing some of these coffee festivals and taking like 100 bags with me, and I tell people I use a bullet, and they're like, "How do you do that?" It's like because I want it more than you. Like I will find a way to find a way, and and I'm having fun. I mean, it's like you got to find your passion, and you got to bet on yourself and believe in it. If you really are driven to do this, then no is not in your vocabulary, and you're going to find that. But not
Yeah.
everybody's cut out to do it. It just really, to me, I think it's all about developing your community and being a student, being able to take constructive feedback from people, not having an ego, be willing to give back. Those are the things I think that give you longevity to where you get more opportunities, and it helps you grow yourself when you're taking the time to work with somebody that is really frustrated and can't get answers because nobody will talk to them. And it's like, hey man, I'll show you my roast profiles. It's like this ain't rocket science. This is not
Yeah.
some proprietary. And it's like, but teaching people and learning, but you have to be willing to put the time into it and invest, your time and energy and really love it. You're not going to be a millionaire doing this. You do it out of love, and
Mm.
it opens doors, and those are the things to me are the most important. Um, you gotta love coffee.
This has been such an inspiring conversation, Jeff. I really appreciate the insight and knowledge that you have, even in these past 4 to 5 years, getting into coffee. It's really cool to talk to you and hear your story.
Well, I appreciate you having me. It's been fun. I love what you guys are doing, just to promote and to hopefully connect. And you know, I'm on Instagram. If anybody wants to connect with me, Bushel Coffee on Instagram, and I respond. There's just a lot we can learn from each other. You
Yeah,
know, um, so
yeah. I mean,
appreciate it.
you kind of shared it, but I'll just ask, like, where can people find you online? Your social, your website. Where are you at today?
So online, bushhillcoffee.com is my commercial site. So I ship. Um, you can see all the coffee offerings as far as like where you can find me. I am based in North Carolina, so I'm at the Lexington Farmers Market pretty much every Saturday, from 8 to 12, and then this fall I have three big upcoming coffee festivals. September the 14th, I'm at Wilmington Coffee Fest. So if you are in the area, you can go to wilmingtoncoffeefest.com. It's a ticketed event. So probably I don't know how many roasters there are, but it's just like it's a great coffee festival and you get to meet people. We have such a great community in North Carolina. Then in October, I'm at DC Coffee Festival. So that's dccoffeefestival.com. That's at Union Market. That's a 2 day coffee festival. So you're going to see a lot of roasters in the DC area, Virginia and Maryland. It's an awesome experience. you definitely get caffeinated there. And then in November, I'm at the DMV Chocolate and Coffee Festival at Dulles Expo in Chantilly, Virginia. So you can look up DMV Chocolate and Coffee. That one is outrageous. There'll probably be over 10,000 people there. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
lots of roasting in my future.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like it. Gotta start now.
Absolutely.
Man, yeah, one of these days, I hope to meet you at one of these festivals if I'm able to. I think that'd be such a fun experience.
Cross our fingers, maybe next year, Raleigh or Charlotte.
All right, all right, that sounds great. Yeah, Jeff, again, thank you so much for just sharing your story with us, and yeah, wish the best of luck to you with Bush Hill Coffee.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you. And I wish you guys the same. This is awesome that you are taking the time to interview people and to really share the world of specialty coffee.
Yeah, thanks so much. All right. What an awesome conversation with Jeff. I think he just brings a very unique perspective to the way that he does things, and you can tell that he really enjoys it. If you want to learn more about the Coffee Nerds, you can visit us at thecoffeenerds.co, or you can email us at hello@thecoffeenerds.co. You can also find us on Instagram at thecoffeenerds. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more. Cheers.